Picture this. For 10 straight years, two massive armies are just stuck. On one side, you have this huge coalition of Greek states, and on the other, the city of Troy, with walls that just can't be broken. So, after a decade of fighting, how does it all end? Not with some epic final battle. No. It ends with a gift, a giant wooden horse that would go down in history as the ultimate sneak attack. So let's get into it. Let's deconstruct this legend and see if we can find the truth hiding inside. You've probably heard this quote before. It's the chilling warning from the Trojan priest Laocoon. He sees this giant wooden horse left behind by the Greeks who have supposedly just given up and sailed home, and he tries to tell everyone, hey, this is a bad idea. It's a line that has literally echoed through the ages, right? A timeless reminder that danger can be hiding in plain sight. A warning that, tragically, nobody listened to. You've got to understand, the Trojan War wasn't some quick fight. It was a 10-year grind. The Greeks had this massive army, but they were completely stopped by Troy's incredible defenses. We're talking about walls that were supposedly 20 feet high in some places. I mean, that gave the Trojan archers a huge advantage. The Greeks couldn't get in, and the Trojans couldn't push them out. It was a total military deadlock, a real test of who could last longer. So, when brute force clearly isn't working, what do? Well, if you're the clever Greek general Odysseus, you switch to deception. And the plan he came up with was, well, it was audacious. The idea was to build a gigantic wooden horse, leave it on the beach as a supposed offering to the goddess Athena for a safe trip home, and then pretend to sail away in defeat. The whole thing was a massive gamble, banking on the Trojans' pride. And you know what? It worked. The Trojans see the Greek ships are gone, and they are overjoyed. They think they've won. So they drag this enormous horse into their city as a trophy. But that night, while the whole city is celebrating and sleeping, a hidden trapdoor opens. Out crawl Odysseus and his best soldiers. They sneak through the streets, throw open the main gates, and signal the Greek fleet, which was just hiding behind a nearby island. And just like that, the sack of Troy began. I mean, it is one of the greatest stories ever told, right? It's a total masterpiece of strategy. But did any of it actually happen? Was there a real Troy? Was there a real war? And what about that horse? This is where the legend meets archaeology, and we start digging for some real answers. Okay, so to figure out the mystery of the horse, we first have to figure out if the war itself was even a real thing. And our investigation really follows two different paths. You've got the stories people wrote down, and then you've got the actual evidence buried in the dirt. So when we're trying to get to the truth, we have to look at two totally different kinds of evidence. On one hand, you've got the amazing epic poems like Homer's Iliad, incredible stories. But, and this is a big but, they were written down hundreds of years after the war was supposed to have happened. On the other hand, you have archaeology. We're talking ruins, artifacts, hard, physical evidence from the site itself that gives us a direct look at what was happening on the ground around 1200 BC. For centuries, pretty much everyone thought Troy was just a myth, a fantasy city from a poem. But then, in the 1800s, everything changed when a few archaeologists decided to actually go looking for it. So in the 1870s, this guy named Heinrich Schliemann, he was absolutely convinced Troy was real, and he started digging around in modern-day Turkey. He found ruins, sure, but a lot of people were skeptical. Then, you fast forward to the 1990s and bam! Modern archaeology reveals this huge lower city. We're not talking about some small town. This was a powerful, rich fortress, exactly the kind of place described in the legends. And the fortress they uncovered was no joke. This city was literally built to survive a long siege. The evidence shows its walls were angled and strengthened. They found a huge new defensive tower, and it looks like they deliberately blocked some of the gates to make it harder to attack. But here's the real kicker. They had an underground spring for fresh water and these massive jars for stockpiling food. From a military standpoint, this city could hold out for a very, very long time. So here's the bottom line. We have a real city, built like a fortress, that meets a super violent end right around the time the Trojan War was supposed to have happened. The proof of a huge battle? We're talking charred remains, arrowheads everywhere. It's undeniable. The Trojan War, or at least some major war at Troy, almost certainly happened. That part is real history. Okay, so if the city was real, and the war was real, what about the horse? Let's be honest, the idea of a few dozen soldiers hiding inside a giant wooden statue seems, well, it sounds like a myth, right? So, did the poets just make it up, or could it be a metaphor for something else entirely? And this is where historians and archaeologists have had to get pretty creative. Most of them agree that the story, as it's told, is pretty unlikely. So instead, they started looking for clues in ancient technology, history, and even geology to explain where this wild idea of a giant horse might have come from. So let's check out the leading theories. All right, theory one is the most practical. In the ancient world, armies used siege engines, like battering rams, and they'd often cover these wooden machines in wet animal skins, like horse hides, to stop the enemy from setting them on fire. So it's very possible that a big wooden battering ram covered in horse hides finally broke through Troy's walls, and over the centuries, the story just simplified it down to the horse. Now, this next idea is pretty cool. It has to do with ships. We know there was a type of Phoenician ship back then called a hippos, which is literally the Greek word for horse, and these ships often had a horse's head carved on the front. So could the legend have started with soldiers hiding inside a ship like this, one that was maybe offered up as a tribute, and the story just got twisted over time? This last theory is maybe the most poetic of them all. So the Greek god Poseidon was the god of the sea, sure, but he was also the god of horses and earthquakes. And here's the fascinating part. Archaeology has confirmed that Troy was hit by a really bad earthquake at some point. So, could the Trojan horse be a powerful metaphor for the god Poseidon himself, smashing the walls, creating a hole that the Greeks could finally get through? So whether it was a siege engine, a ship, or an earthquake, the story of a gift bringing down an entire city has survived for 3,000 years. And why is that? It's because the main idea is just timeless. The reason this story sticks with us is because it's the ultimate cautionary tale. It warns us that the biggest threats don't always come charging at you with swords drawn. Sometimes they show up disguised as a gift, or as a victory, something you think you want, only to reveal their true, dangerous nature when it's way too late. And that idea is so powerful, we still use the phrase Trojan horse in our language all the time. It means any trick that gets an enemy to willingly drop their defenses. And we see it most clearly today in the world of computing. A Trojan virus is literally a piece of bad software that you download yourself because you think it's something useful or fun. It gets inside your system and then opens the gates to let all the other bad stuff in. So in the end, whether the horse was a battering ram, a ship, or an earthquake, its historical reality almost doesn't matter as much as the power of the legend itself. The story of Troy is a permanent reminder to look deeper, to question what you see, and you know what they say, to beware of Greeks bearing gifts. It really leaves us with a pretty big question for our own lives. What gifts might we be accepting right now without ever questioning what's really inside?